My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise from worst to best. And this franchise just didn't do it for me. There's a few exceptions, but for the most part, I thought the movies were really repetitive, just really dull and lacking movies. So let's just begin with the worst, and it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre the Next Generation. And I watched this movie a few weeks ago, and the only thing I remember about it is that Leatherface is in drag. Everything else completely forgettable. I think Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger are in this movie, but they just don't stand out in any way. Everything with Leatherface chasing them and the dinner table scene, it's all just been done to death by this point. So this movie bored me to no end. I thought it was atrocious, so that's why it's the worst of the franchise. Coming in at just above it, we've got Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. And once again, I just remember nothing about this movie. I remember it offered more of the same while never being effective or memorable along the way. I do believe there was some cool practical effects. And is this the one with the golden chainsaw? I think so. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got. It's another atrocious movie as well. I've completely forgotten about it already. The third worst movie of this franchise is Leatherface. This is the one that came out in 2017, and I do appreciate its attempts to do something different. And there's a cool idea at the end where they make you think one character is Leatherface, but it turns out to be someone else entirely. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see, that's a cool idea. But everything else in this movie just sucks. It's bland, it's flat, it's never tense or thrilling or disturbing. It's just a big or nothing movie with one cool idea. So it's better than the other two, but not by much. The fourth worst movie of this franchise is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. And this movie is brutal, it is mean, but it's also completely ineffective. Like, despite how messed up and bloody this movie is, I never felt the weight of it once. The writing just wasn't there, the direction wasn't there. I just found it to be a completely empty, soulless experience, and it really drags at 90 minutes. Like, I feel like this movie gave me everything it could possibly offer within the first act, and just getting to that finish line was a real chore. There were some cool effects, but once again, it just did nothing for me. Those were the movies of this franchise I do not like, but let's begin talking about the ones I do. So, in fifth place, we've got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 remake. Now, the first hour of this movie is pretty rough. There is some cool blood and gore effects. There's one really cool camera movement where it goes through someone's head. The movie's got this piss-stained look to it that really adds this gross, grimy aesthetic to the movie. But the first hour is for the most part pretty dull. It doesn't do much for me. The characters are generic. I didn't think I was going to like this movie, but I do think the last act saves it enough. It's thrilling and exciting enough to give that movie a little bit more momentum, a little bit more energy, and to get me a bit more invested. By the end, I was just like, okay. I was won over by the last act. Is this movie great? No. Is this a glowing recommendation? Absolutely not. But by the end, it did enough. So that's why it's in fifth place. In fourth place is a very, 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 very steaming hot take, but it's Texas Chainsaw 3D. Now, this movie is despised. Many people just are not a fan of this movie in any way, shape, or form. But I have fun with it. I think it's an entertaining movie, and it manages to be exciting enough, thrilling enough, while also having some nice schlock in it. Like, this movie is the very definition of so bad it's good in moments. That scene where she tosses Leatherface the chainsaw and says, "Do your thing, cuz," is a 10 out of 10 comedic moment. That scene where she's getting chased and she trips over the fence is hilarious. I even like the fact that Alexandra Daddario is playing like a 38-year-old woman, and she's clearly not that old or anywhere close to being of that age. It's just filled with some baffling decisions, but that's what I enjoy about it. It's just, how does this movie exist? Now, the flip side of that is that this movie's very morally misguided. They try to paint Leatherface as this anti-hero, as this misunderstood person, and I think all of this is complete bullshit. It doesn't work for me at all, but there's definitely enough enjoyment to be had, so that's why it's in 4th place. Speaking of steaming hot takes, my third favorite movie of this franchise is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2022 version. And before I watched this movie, I heard that it sucked. It was just awful. So I watched it with real low expectations, but I think everyone is so severely wrong on this movie. Now, I do got issues with it. I'm not a fan of the inclusion of Sally. It felt like the filmmakers just saw the 2018 Halloween and wanted to do the exact same thing here, and it doesn't work. I thought the bus scene was really stupid, and I do not like the ending of this movie. Those issues aside, this movie fully embraces the slasher genre in the best way possible. It is a brutal, thrilling, intense movie. I think it's lots of fun. Sarah Larkin and Elsie Fisher give great performances, and I really liked the sister dynamic between the two of them. And yeah, like, I just thought this movie was so much fun and just really well done for the most part. It's well directed, it's well shot. I think this movie deserves much better than it gets, so that's why it's my third favorite. And now we're down to the top 2, and you can already guess which 2 they are, but in 2nd place we've got the original, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this movie is beautifully shot. I love the grainy aesthetic it has. I also love how you can feel the heat. This movie just looks exhausting in the best way possible. I also think this movie is very well escalated. Well, you've got the hitchhiker, and then you've got these characters arriving at a house, and just how soon, one by one, they start to vanish until eventually we get to this grand finale at the dinner table. It's just a movie that's always evolving, it's always changing, and it's always getting more and more effective. The chase scenes by Leatherface are definitely thrilling enough, but it's the dinner table scene and just the psychological aspect of it that gets under my skin more than anything. It just feels like a descent into hell in the best way possible. It's a very disturbing movie, and I thought Sally was a good character. I also like Leatherface. He's clearly iconic. You've also got Jim Seidel, who I think does a really good job. You've also got the hitchhiker, who just adds this unnerving feeling to the movie. So Not everyone's super memorable, but I do think there's enough characters that stand out, and the ending is very satisfying. So, yeah, I got a couple issues here and there with it, but I still think this is a very strong and a great movie. So that's why it's the second best. But it's not the best. No. The best goes to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Now, I will begin talking about my biggest issue with this movie, and it's the way it ends. Like, the fate of so many characters is left unclear, so I thought that was a baffling decision, but everything else in this movie I love. Yes, it does copy some elements from the first movie, but it's only the second movie in, so I can forgive it, and it still manages to be effective here, so it doesn't bother me as much as when they do it again and again later on in this franchise. What really stands out is the cast, because you've got Carolyn Williams playing Stretch, and she does a great job. This is a memorable final girl. I thought Dennis Hopper did a really great job as well. You've got Jim Cedar, who is just horrific and so unsettling in the best way possible. You've also got Leatherface, who has a bit more to do in this movie. I thought he was well done. But then we've got the performance by Bill Moseley playing Crop Top. And this character is just a real standout. He brings so much life and energy and personality into this movie. He is so loud and obnoxious, but it works to the movie's benefit. I just think this movie, out of all of them, have the best characters and have the best actors in it. I also love the practical effects in this movie. It can be really brutal and disturbing when needed, but the production design is also top notch. I love the location of this underground amusement park. It's brought to life so incredibly well. It just adds this aesthetic to the movie that works so incredibly well. The movie is very well escalated as well. How it starts off with those two characters in that vehicle, and then it moves over to the radio shop, and then it moves over to the location of the amusement park. It's a movie that escalates to the point where you get more and more invested, and to the point where the movie gets more and more disturbing, just like the original movie does. I also love the final moment in this movie. It kind of feels iconic to me. And yeah, I think this movie manages to be effective and disturbing. It can also be funny at times. There's plenty of craftsmanship to it, and it's just a very lively, memorable movie that I had a blast with, so that's why it's my favorite of this franchise. But what's your ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for more videos soon, and Gavin out.